Well, I appreciate the introduction. And one of the things I did when I was running for county commission back in 2016 is I made a pledge to the voters that I would speak to anybody. And as a commissioner, I've done that, so I wasn't going to stop now. So when you invited me, I had something on my calendar, it cleared out, and I emailed you back to say I could make it. So I appreciate the invitation. One of the things that I said early on was that I'd never forget who I work for. We may have differences of opinion on policy and things that I do and decisions I make, but nobody gets 100% approval on every vote. That's just the way it is. I don't care who's sitting in the seat. So I've never forgotten who I work for, even people that disagree with me. I can tell you I respond to my emails, phone calls with people who are upset maybe with what we're doing, but I return them and I respond. I'm very receptive that way. And one of the reasons I did that, I remember before I was a commissioner, I wanted to see one of my county commissioners as a private citizen. And it took me 3 months to get an appointment. It got canceled twice, and the receptionist asked how much time do you need. I told them I needed 30 minutes. When I finally got to my appointment, they said the commissioner was running late, and I got reduced to 15 minutes. And that stuck with me. And I said, I will never do that when I was running. I remember that story. I said, I will never do that to my constituents. When they call me, you will get a response from me. And I get a lot of emails where they don't necessarily have a question for a commissioner, it's just a general information question. But when they want to speak to me personally, they get that call. And I'm so serious about it, I told my executive assistant, when it comes in, I don't care where I am, you immediately hang up the phone and call me and let me know, or send me an email that somebody wants to speak to me. And my rule has always been you get same-day service from me, or 24 hours is my rule. If it's something that I need to do a lot of research on, it may take me a little time, I'll give it 48 hours, and I'll respond and say I need more time. And I've done that, and I'm really proud of that. And I know my opponent, Mr. Kesselring, can tell you, he sent me numerous emails over the years. I've always responded to him. We may not agree on the content, but I've always responded. Little bit of background on myself for those of you who don't know. Moved to Charlotte County in 1980, first graduating class at Port Charlotte High School in 1984. Went to Florida Southern College, graduated in 88. By the time I was 26 years old, I had my Class A general contractor's license, my real estate license, and I founded my own construction company called Joseph Construction. Got married in 1999 to my wife, Nicole. Have 4 kids. They've all gone through the public school system here. Port Charlotte High School, I have one left. He's a sophomore at Port Charlotte High School. I have a daughter who's at UCF. She's a sophomore. I have a son that just graduated from Florida Gulf Coast. And I have another son who's a firefighter for the Englewood Fire District. He just turned 20. But why are those things so important? When I ran in 2016, I ran on common sense defined by experience. When you look at things that come before the Board of County Commissioners, contracts, agreements, construction, infrastructure, all of those things are in my wheelhouse. I had a base of knowledge going into the job. And when you have that kind of knowledge, you don't necessarily need a staffer or a bureaucrat telling you what you're reading. You can question them. And that goes a long way. And I can tell you 100% that experience has served me well. It's made me a better commissioner, and when I'm a better commissioner, I can serve you better. Those of you who have watched me on the dais over the years know that I ask the tough questions, and I take on the tough issues. Again, when I ran in 2016, I said, you have to do things the right way. You can twist the rules, you can bend the rules, but you cannot break the rules. I've taken on my own party. I've taken on the legislature, members of the legislature, and I've taken on developers here in Charlotte County. Nobody gets a free pass when you come in the dais, come into the chamber. You do things the correct way, and if you don't, you'll hear from me. So a couple of things that I've done because I have a record to run on. So when it comes to transparency, accountability, budget, and the environment, I'd like to point out a few things. I proposed and passed televised workshops in my first 6 months on the dais. Mr. Kesselring will tell you they used to be held in a small room, B106. They were not televised, they were recorded, you had minutes. He used to be there with his camera. Never made any sense to me because You are paying for those workshops. You are paying for the consultants. You are paying for staff. And more importantly, you are paying for me to be there to represent you and ask the questions. And when I asked staff, why aren't these televised? They told me they could never get consensus from the commissioners. They wanted them in that room because they felt they could be more relaxed and ask more casual questions and not feel pressured with the cameras rolling. I brought it up at a board meeting and I said, gentlemen, these have to be televised. I'm having trouble taking notes and we're paying for this. So I was able to get consensus. That was in my first couple of months. And those workshops are now televised and they are in our archives, so the whole, all our constituency and all our citizens can see what we're doing in those workshops, because a lot of the basis for the decisions we make come out of those workshops. And people would ask me, why did you make that decision? Well, we had a workshop. I would tell them, well, I didn't know about a workshop. I'm working. I couldn't get there. It was in a room. It's not televised. So that didn't make sense to me. But those things I was able to get done. When I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I had volunteered prior to becoming a commissioner on a couple of different, in a couple of different positions. When I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals, citizens would come in and say, I just found out about this at the last minute, this land use issue. I didn't get notified. A neighbor told me, or I just found out at the last second, and I just got here to speak. And that stuck in my mind too. So when I became a commissioner, I said, how come we're only direct mailing people 250 feet from a zoning or a land use issue? That's only like 3 standard lots away. So if you live at the end of the block, you don't know what's going on at the other end of the block. So I propose we enlarge that to 1,000 feet so more people know what's going on in their neighborhood. I got that passed. I support broadcasting all our meetings on multiple platforms, Facebook, Comcast, YouTube, and we even have a streaming app. There's a lot of high-speed fiber going in now. People are cutting the cord. You can now download a live app, Charlotte County app, and live stream all of our meetings. And that goes to transparency. I told you about my replying to constituency, and that's my personal policy. Every commissioner is different. Took the lead on Family Services Center. Again, my opponent will tell you, I think it was in 2017, the Family Services Center had passed in the 2014 sales tax, and it stalled out. It just was not moving ahead. And there was a move to rezone the property for apartments. And the people in Parkside, which is my district, said, hey, what happened to our Family Services Center? We voted for this. I ended up having a town hall at the Cultural Center, and it was a full house. And people were demanding, you know, why isn't our Family Services Center on the books and being built? Well, I didn't have enough information on it, so I went back and had staff prepare me something called the Bible. That's what Hector Flores called it. He's our county administrator now. He was assistant county administrator back then. Probably this thick. And at every vote, every shred of paper that had to do with the Family Services Center. I reviewed all of that information. I remember walking into the chamber. I plunked it on top of the dais, and I said, gentlemen, why aren't we building the Family Services Center? Everything in that book says we're supposed to build the Family Services Center. And I was able to compel and get the votes to finally move ahead with the construction of not just phase 1, we just completed phase 2 of the Family Services Center, and I was proud to take the lead and get that job done. I proposed and passed, and I don't know if this has been done before, a millage rate reduction in Charlotte County. I got that passed in 2022 from 6.3 mils, this is for the county general millage rate, to 6.1787. And why is that important? I failed to get that passed in 2021. I could not get the votes. I had been pushing for that for a long time, and just, you know, obviously you need 3 votes to get anything done. I brought it back in 2022 and pleaded with my colleagues it was time for a millage rate reduction to give some level of relief. Because as a Republican, as a conservative Republican, we should be able to cut when we can, and that was the argument I made. I said we can do this, we can still meet our obligations, still submit a plan, balanced budget to the Department of Revenue, and give our constituency a tax cut. And I got that passed, and it took me 2 times, but I got it done. And that just goes to resiliency. If there's an issue I think that's important, even if I can't get the votes, I'll continue to come back until I can get it passed, and that's just another example. The county has a high credit rating from Moody's Standard & Poor's. Under my years on the board, our debt position has decreased 20%. We have a balanced budget every year in office. We have a 2-year budget cycle, which is very forward-thinking. We're not just looking at the budget this year, we're going 2 years out. And Hal will tell you that. He works in budget and financing. He works with Gordon Berger, our finance director. I think you've already publicly said he's a top-notch guy, crosses the T's, dots the I's. And we do that so you can see how we plan for the budget, again, not just now, but in the second year as well. We approved the 20-year CIP. That's a capital improvement plan. Again, we don't want to get caught not looking 20 years down the road at what the county infrastructure needs are going to be. So we create a 20-year CIP plan, and we break it into 5-year parts called programs. So we take small chunks out of that 20-year plan, and then we cobble together the funding to get that done, whether it's through millage rate, grant funding, or funding from the state of Florida. But we look at all those different options to get those things done. I approved an asset management plan, which is being worked on right now. It's not fully implemented, but that will track every single public asset that we have in one place, so we can track our assets better. We can look at when life cycle of things are predicted to need replacement, and again, it goes to the budget process. In my first term, I ordered an audit of the airport firefighters agreement, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. We had an agreement with the airport where we were providing fire services, but the reimbursement schedule was not correct. I brought that to the attention of staff and to the board. We were able to bring it back to the airport authority. They are now paying us the full compensation for the services that we're providing, for the fire services we're providing there. I approved our One Charlotte, One Water policy. That's a holistic look at water in Charlotte County, from stormwater, rainwater, sewer, septic. We look at everything water, the harbors, tributaries, and we hired a water manager, Brandon Moody. There's people in Charlotte County obviously really value water quality, and I value that as well, again, being a longtime resident. So in order to carry out our Charlotte One Water policy, we hired Brandon to help us manage that. I proposed and passed an overhaul of our aggregate mining oversight regulations. I proposed and passed a resolution supporting DeSoto County's denial of Mosaic's phosphate mining rezoning application. I approved changes to our land use code prohibiting phosphate mining in Charlotte County. I also proposed and passed the Tiseo Amendment, limiting density in West County. And that's an example, again, of listening to my constituents. We were going through our comp plan review last year, and people from West County were part of the stakeholder group, and they kept coming to the board meeting saying, we're really concerned in our high coastal areas, hazard areas, about density. And we'd like to propose a cap of 15 units per acre max out in everything west of the Myakka River. So after all the discussion was had, all the public input was had, we had a board discussion. I just waited. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind about that request from the constituents. So I'm waiting and waiting, and everybody got done talking. I queued in, I looked at the county attorney, and I said, does anything prohibit us from putting a cap on density in West County? She kind of paused a moment and said, I don't think there is. So I proposed we put a cap out there. The constituents emailed me a few days later, thanking me for listening to them, putting that on the table, which ultimately got passed, and they called it the Tiseo Amendment. So they came back to the chamber to talk about it, and they coined that phrase. So I mean, I'm really proud of that, because not because it's named after me, but it's an example of listening. And I've always tried to put my constituency first. Again, we don't always agree, but I'll listen and I'll have that conversation. But you know, when I announced I was running, I said I was going to run a positive campaign. But I will point out differences, because you need to know there are differences between me and my opponent. While he hasn't held public office, he's made a lot of public comments. He's talked about things just recently that, you know, one of the things as Republicans we value is honesty, integrity, and trust. Those are the values we uphold. And he said a couple of things lately that I believe you should be aware of. First of all, he said government buildings should be metal buildings with windows and air conditioning. Think about that for a minute. We just got hit with Hurricane Ian, the devastation it had in Charlotte County. And he said we should cut the way we construct our buildings with reinforced concrete, and we should basically build metal buildings to house our first responders, our infrastructure. The people who are there to help you when the storm passes are going to be in a shed. Think about that for a minute. I don't know where that came from, but that's his position. He also announced some cuts that we should be making. He said we should stop providing non-government things like park amenities such as pickleball splash pads and exercise equipment. People can entertain themselves. We were talking about, it happened during our budget meeting in 2023 or in September. We're talking about the William R. Gaines Park. And we all value, I know there's some veterans in this room. We value our veterans because, number one, Charlotte County has over 20,000 veterans here, but we value them because of the blood and treasure that they've sacrificed to protect our Constitution, right? Nothing can be more important than that. And throughout our history, we've paid tribute to our servicemen and women for the sacrifice they've made. There are memorials and there are parks dedicated to our vets throughout this country. We have the William R. Gaines Memorial Park. He said the park is a waste of money. He said the memorial is a waste of your money. What he doesn't know and what he should have known is that memorial is not even using a penny of your tax dollars. That memorial is being funded by a nonprofit. Not a penny of your tax money is going to that, yet he said it was a waste of your money, and he said it was a tribute to another commissioner. That other commissioner happens to be our veterans liaison. He did take the lead on the project. Why? He's our liaison. He was assigned to that committee. I think he's been on it for 10 or 12 years, as long as he's been in office. Michael Gaines, the brother of William R. Gaines, went to Commissioner Deutsch to talk about the sacrifice that his brother made in Beirut. 241 Marines killed in defense of our Constitution. And my opponent said it was a big waste of money. So we're going to disagree on that one. None of our veteran sacrifices are a waste of your money. I will stand by that park any day of the week. Furthermore, the money that we're spending on the park right now was voted on in the sales tax. Every improvement there was voted on and passed with about 60% of the vote. So, but that's something under the Kesselring regime he would like to cut. So if you like your parks, you're not going to get them. If you like the cultural center, which is in our district, you're not going to get it because according to him, that's a non-government thing. Is that Susan Hutt that just came in? Susan, is that you? How you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. He said we need to stop groveling for grants. Federal grants is what he said. So I've got to tell you, one of the things we do to keep your taxes low is we apply for federal grants. He seems to think if you don't apply for federal grants, it goes back to the federal government. That is not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. If there is grant money out there and you don't take it, the next community is going to get it. I'm going to fight to bring back every penny of our tax dollars to Charlotte County, and he's already said he's not even going to do that. He's given up the fight before it's even started. So I don't understand that one either, and he clearly does not understand how grants work from the federal government. He also proposed the largest expansion of bureaucracy in the history of Charlotte County. He said we need to get all the counties together in the state, and probably the cities, and we should price fix what we pay our firefighters. He said we should get all the counties together, and we should form some type of, I don't know, some type of cabal or something, I don't know what you want to call it, which you're going to have to hire an executive director, more bureaucrats. Think about that. Where are the meetings going to be? In Orlando somewhere? So if you have a problem with your firefighters' pay schedule, you're going to have to answer to a bunch of bureaucrats somewhere in the state. He's giving up the power that you have given an elected official to act on your behalf and he's handing it over to a bureaucrat. So if you have a problem with your fire rates, you have to answer to somebody else, some unelected person, not even in Charlotte County. That's a real head scratch for somebody who's running on less bureaucracy. I would never support that because, again, you're going to lose your voice, your local voice, and have your authority usurped by somebody else. We also value honesty. I told you that earlier, honesty. So my opponent, during the budget process, came to the budget hearing and said, the county's wasting your tax dollars on $1 million sign. I reached out to Mr. Kesselring. I emailed him the proposal for the project he was talking about and said, look, it's not just $1 million for a sign. It's a project for sidewalks, crosswalks, infrastructure, drainage improvements, and it includes a sign. The sign was $9,000. I gave him that information. He acknowledged he got it. He said thank you or something like that in an email. A week later, he came to the budget hearing, and what did he say? He stepped up to the mic, and he said, we're wasting your money. We spent $1 million on a sign. After I emailed him, provided him the information, you cannot willingly and knowingly deceive your constituents like that. That cannot happen. I've never done that as a candidate. I've never done it as an elected official. He said at the REC meeting, we wasted your tax dollars, $90,000 for cornhole. That never happened either. He said he read somewhere. He heard from somebody. Somebody told him. So he said we spent $90,000 on cornhole and wasted your money. We didn't spend a penny of your tax dollars on cornhole. As a matter of fact, the money came from the Visitors and Convention Bureau, the bed tax, okay? And the bed tax is supposed to be used for tourism-related expenditures. And the cornhole event here was funded $15,000 from that, $5,000 of a grant from the state, for a total of $20,000. It created 1,100 bed nights and over $1 million in economic impact to Charlotte County. But he wants you to believe we wasted $90,000 on cornhole. He said we approved growth without having enough water. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, I sit on the Water Authority on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, and I represent you on that board. Right now, we have 16.1 million gallons a day. We have enough water for everybody that's here and all the projected growth through 2045. That's everything on the books now and everything for the next 20 some odd years. We have water now. So I don't know, again, where he's getting that information other than he said, I read somewhere. And then he said sewers use way too much water. Sewers don't use any more water than what you're already getting. The way sewers work, for every gallon that comes in through the spigot, it's 1 gallon out. He says it creates and wastes millions of extra gallons. It does not. So those are just a few of the differences that I have with my opponent, and I think Matt is here to cut me off.
Yeah, I can see your notes while I was watching.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So everyone, I'm going to ask one, and then I'm going to go this way through. The first one I want to ask you is, I'm going to give you the two-parter, and I'll follow up because I know what do you think is a comparable government? And then if you want to add it now before I follow up, if you want to address things you think that are working well and things you think that can be changed or improved upon.
Okay. Yeah, so the basic functions of government are public policy, infrastructure, health, safety, and welfare of the community. Your 5 county commissioners are essentially like your legislature. We're the policy makers. And we have a commission county administrator form of government. We craft policy, the county administrator carries out that policy and handles the day-to-day functions of government. The county administrator hires and fires all the personnel. The only 3 direct employees the county commission has are the county attorney, the county administrator, and the economic development director. They answer and serve at the pleasure of the board. Everybody else is hired and fired by Hector Flores, our county administrator.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and forth with the microphone and give it to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wander, and then you can of course come, but I'll just pass it back.
Okay, or I can talk real loud. You can hear me.
Whatever you feel.
I have several, sorry.
Sure, go ahead. That's all right.
Okay, so first I'm going to start off with Florida leading cities. you go to them and where they located and can guests attend those?
Do you want
That's
the
my first question.
Yeah. No, I do not attend the Florida League of Cities because I'm not a council person. I go to the Florida Association of Counties. Those I do go to because I'm a county commissioner, not a council. Whenever they have the meetings, probably I go to their annual meeting at least once a year, and then they have other functions during the course of the year. But I usually go to at least once a year.
Do you post everything online and we can read what you guys do there, or do you, because we've never heard what you guys do there.
Yeah, so the Florida Association of Counties is a consortium basically of all the counties, and we can get together and try to solve problems and share experiences. So if we have a problem, I might be able to talk to a commissioner from another county who had the same problem, and we exchange ideas like that. You can go to the Florida Association of Counties website. It's got the agenda and all the different committees.
Can people go as guests?
That's a good question. I've never really seen anybody as a guest. I don't know if it's prohibited, but maybe you could. Yeah, you can probably go to their website and ask.
Okay. You're talking about infrastructure, water issues, whatnot. So infrastructure, I'm a grassroots candidate. You know that. I go door knocking every weekend. And the complaint I get from the constituents is infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I live here, so there is problems with infrastructure. Okay. What are we doing with infrastructure when the builders are paying their fair share? Because they do not pay their fair share because I follow the money.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know right now, I do deep dives. So what are we going to do about that? And also, as far as building, all right, along the water and everything else, are we going to become Fort Myers and Sarasota? Because we don't want that.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I get that question a lot too about infrastructure. So I mentioned I moved here back in 1980. Was anybody back here back then? Raise your hand if you're here in 1980. Okay. So when we were here, we can remember there were less than 50,000 people, and we got a hand right there. Less than 50,000 people. I remember there was one signal at Harbor and 41, and Midway was a four-way stop. And going to the beach, it was like I would go to Englewood Beach. It's like, after, class was out with my high school friends, it's like we owned the beach. But yeah, infrastructure, we've seen it grow. In my time as a commissioner, our population has grown 25,000 people, or about 15%. That's just in my time as a commissioner. Florida is going through a huge growth spurt right now. Right now, the state has a net of about 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. That's a lot of people. That's 365,000 people a year, and it's not stopping. And they've discovered Charlotte County as a waterfront value. The way General Development laid out Charlotte County, they were interested in selling lots. They weren't interested in what Charlotte County looked like 50 or 60 years down the road. It was $10 down, $10 a month, and if you're a blue-collar worker from the Midwest, you got your slice of the pie. So while they're selling lots back in the 60s, they're not thinking about what it's going to look like in 2024. Those are things that the commission has to grapple with, and other commissioners who didn't take on the hard issues. So in terms of the impact fees, so anybody who's followed the impact fee discussion, the impact fees were discounted. There's something called the Impact Fee Act, and by statute, that was in 1986, I believe. The legislature passed that, and it recognized that Florida was a growth state, and that the existing tax base alone couldn't cover the infrastructure demands. So they allowed you to have an impact fee. You have to have a technical report tied to localized data that you can is legally defensible, and you can tie it to the impact that the actual house or commercial project is making on the county. So once you come up with the number, the statute also allowed you to discount it. And what happened in Charlotte County is they were discounting the impact fee as much as 50, 60%. So for decades, we were never getting 100% of what the technical report said. So a couple of years ago, Chris Constance was kind of alone in the woods. He was trying to make the impact fees go to where the technical report said they should be. So I jumped on with him, and for 2 years, I ended up taking the lead on it. We kept coming back, and it really got a few times a contentious debate. We were able to get the impact fees up to 90% of what the report said, and 100% of the transportation portion, because we knew transportation was really important. And we go through something called concurrency. So to specifically answer your question, are the developers paying what they're supposed to? So through the concurrency process, we have something called a proportionate share agreement. So they're going to submit traffic reports, and they're going to submit their site plan, and our engineers and our staff is going to look at that through the review process to make sure they're concurrent for water, We can't issue a permit if it's not concurrent for water, sewer, and transportation and other environmental issues. You have to do an environmental survey and things like that, and schools. They make sure that the schools are provided for. So in that proportionate share agreement, it's determined what impact they're having on infrastructure outside of their project, because they're not responsible to widen, let's say, a whole road for miles, but they might have to pay for like 600 or 700 feet of improvement somewhere down the road. So the developer either does that off-site himself, or he pays the county to do it if we have a project coming up and he contributes. So yeah, that is addressed through the concurrency process. It's addressed through impact fees, and impact fees is coming back again. Our current technical report, the board decided we're going to redo it in 2026. So we're going to start having discussions in 2025 about ordering a new technical report to comply with the statutes.
So if you want, they want the county to pay for the widening, whatever, that comes out of our pocket, right, taxpayers. So
Yeah.
taxpayers really don't want that, so we can make an amendment, or we do the statute. Are you willing?
Well, that might be a Danny Nix question. He's running for state rep. So here's another thing that's really important. Property rights. A lot of people say, just don't issue permits. We want to shut the door. We're here already. Nobody gets to come here. So think about this for a minute. If you bought a lot 5 or 6 years ago, or even last year, you're paying taxes on that lot. Do you really expect government to just say, now they're ready to pull a building permit? No, you can't do it. Even though everything's concurrent, we just don't want it here anymore because things are busy right now. We feel it's getting overcrowded. But you got to keep paying taxes in perpetuity. How's that going to work? That's tantamount to a taking, or a Burt-Harris Act. We would bankrupt the county if we had to pay everybody if we decided not to pull a permit just because we didn't want to pull a permit, because we didn't want growth. If they check the boxes and they do everything correctly and everything's concurrent and all their plans are done and they do their permits, they are entitled to exercise their property rights. I think we can all value property rights as Republicans in this room. Now, does it mean we can't do anything about it? No. Where we can make a difference is on the rezones, when they're trying to get something more than they're already entitled to. Because many of the lots, I'll give you an example. Wawa's building a project out in Englewood. I'm getting it flooded with emails saying, don't let the Wawa go in. It's not even coming to the Board of County Commissioners. That is a by right project. It's already zoned commercial. They don't need to come see us. They have property rights. They go right to the building department. If they meet all the site plan requirements and all the things I explained, they get their permits. They're paying taxes. They're entitled to use their property, not pay taxes forever. So it's a balance, though. I don't disagree. We have to manage that growth as best we can going forward. And part of the comp plan and part of the Florida statutes require us to consider property rights in the decision-making process. We cannot ignore them. It's in the statutes. It's an element of the comp plan. And for those of you who don't know what the comp plan is required by statute to give a roadmap for the county on growth. And ours goes out to the year 2050. And every 7 years, we get to reopen the comp plan and look at making amendments, changes, revisions, things like that. And that's where the Tiseo amendment came in. I took my chance every 7 years, jumped in on that, and that's how I made a difference on density out in West County. You know, I was able to get that done. And there's a question.
Yes, I see. Yeah, if you can do anything, I know this is really difficult. I'm trying to get everyone around the circle, so one more thing, I know it's hard to elaborate on a lot of these points, but I'm going around this circle.
Yeah, I'll be
I can stay, by the way, even though I might be done. I'll hang around and answer any questions. I'll stay tonight. I'll stay after Danny, whatever, if they want me to stay and people want. Yeah, I'll keep going. Yeah, go be Mr. Nix. Go ahead.
Okay, Sarasota County has divested itself from United Way because of their conflict of interest, because they're paying for abortions, family planning. I would like to ask you if our county would consider doing that, and if you would be willing to push that.
Yeah, you know, I read about that in the paper. I haven't done much research on it, so it'd be hard for me to say. I don't know if our United Way does that. I know they do great work in Charlotte County, and we partner with them to distribute funds to the very low and moderate income people. But I would have to look in to see what their policy is on that. I don't know. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
Is he
I just
inserted?
have a question about that. I live off of Washington Road in 17, and there's a large, very large piece of property that is being developed. I understand that it is going to be a mobile home park. I'm quite surprised that we are supporting more mobile home parks in a hurricane situation area.
That's a good question.
Yeah, appreciate that question. So one of the things mobile home parks do is that it's able to provide housing at a lower cost for people at a different income level. It has to meet the same standards as your house. So even though it's a mobile home, it has to meet the hurricane zone, flood zone. It doesn't get like a special exemption from those things. So they do have to meet current Florida building code.
Did it or did it not cost more money after the hurricane than mobile home parks?
Some of the mobile home parks out in West County took it really bad, but there's some other manufactured home and mobile home parks just over the line in DeSoto County came across unscathed. So, you know, I was able to go up in the sheriff's helicopter after the hurricane and do a survey of Charlotte County. I went all the way to Arcadia. I went out to West County, the Barrier Islands, and it's amazing what you can see from 1,000 feet up. You can see the houses that were newer built to code and the older houses based on the damage assessment from the air. And I saw some out in West County, some of those mobile home parks looked like they blew up. It looked like someone dropped a bomb on them, and literally the house next door looked unscathed. But coming from the building, it could have been a mini tornado or whatever it was. But coming from the building industry, I understand building code, and I can tell you the code matters. So people who complain, well, the code just got improved, it's going to cost me more to build a house. When you're sitting in your house, like I'm sure a lot of us sheltered in place, I did during Charlie and I did during Ian, and you're in there for 8-9 hours with Ian, I remember walking my roof when I built my house in 1999. I made sure that they nailed the plywood. I watched them nail it. I watched them strap every strap to the truss. I made sure they filled every hole of the strap and cross-nailed the truss straps. And I had my roof redone 2 years ago. I got up on the roof. I watched them put down the underlayment, re-nail the roof. The code works. But those manufactured homes do have to meet code. And it does provide affordable housing for people. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Well, I'll let you work the mic. I don't want to skip it. Yeah, sorry.
You're doing good.
What did you do on the Sunseeker Resort? Did you go for the Sunseeker Resort?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm glad I get to clear that up. So there's kind of a myth going around that the Board of County Commissioners approved Sunseeker. That's another by right project. So the CRA, the Charlotte Harbor CRA, was created in 1992 after that area was deemed blighted. And the CRA is a community redevelopment area, and it wants to encourage development to revitalize the area, help the tax base, and things like that. Everything Sunseeker did was already in the existing zoning code for the Charlotte Harbor CRA. They did not come to the Planning and Zoning Board or the County Commission to get zoning approval. But what that code said was if they went to a certain height and crossed a certain threshold, they had to provide a public easement to a boardwalk. I think it was 15 feet along the water. And if they went further height, they actually had to construct it. So here's what came before the board. That easement came before the board. We had to approve it for its language and make sure that it did what the zoning said it was supposed to do, public access. And anybody who's been there now, you can walk that boardwalk. It's open from dawn to dusk. I've been there. It's a gorgeous view. So that came before the board for approval, but not the actual zoning. That, like I said, that was already by right. They didn't have to come to us. Another thing that came before the board is when Sunseeker assembled all that acreage, there were a couple of public roads left in there, and we did something called a street vacation. We do those during the course of the year for other people. You might have two neighbors, and there's a paper road in the middle that the county's not going to use. We'll replat it, and each neighbor gets half, and it goes on the tax rolls. So because they assembled all the property and there was no more, you didn't need any more access for somebody else, we vacated the easements, and those roads that were public roads, they're now paying taxes on the roads. And one more thing I can remember came before the board. Our utility is providing the sewer service there, and they were putting in a lift station. The county saw an opportunity to enlarge the lift station that they were required to do for our future needs, and it's always cheaper to do it now and have them do it while it's under construction than us tear everything up and do it later. So we paid them extra to enlarge it to meet our future needs. And they allowed us to do that. They didn't have to, but you know, we told them, look, we'll pay our proportionate share for the enlargement, and the engineers worked out the cost difference. You get an engineer's cost estimate cost, and then we did that. So that's the other thing. But the project itself, I'll tell you how I found out about it. It was a little bit like Walt Disney. I had an appointment on my calendar. It was for John Redmond with Sunseeker. Didn't say what he wanted to talk about. So he came into the meeting, had him scheduled for 30 minutes, what he had requested, and he introduced himself, and he said, guess what? I'm John Redmond with the Legionnaire, and I bought all this property, and I'm going to build a resort. And he just wanted to let me know, because I was a commissioner, what he was going to publicly announce, so I wasn't caught with my pants down, so to speak. So that's how I found out about it. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your other question,
Last ballot, it was put out that the county attorney and county manager would be appointed by the board and report to them instead of being elected. Can you explain to me why that changed?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to try and reconstruct what I think you're trying to say. So we went through a charter review, and I think that might have been a charter review question. I don't know if Dr. Pitts was on that. But I think there was discussion about making our county administrator and county attorney elected positions. That's up to the voters. We don't determine what goes on the ballot. The charter review does, and I guess it didn't make the final cut to get on the ballot. Right now, they're hired by the Board of County Commissioners. As I said earlier, they serve at the pleasure of the board. But, you know, interestingly enough, if the county administrator was an elected position, that could be difficult, because if you have 5 board members serving you, and we craft policy and he decides he doesn't want to implement it because he's going to say, look, I don't answer to you, I answer to the people, you can have a real conflict there with the county administrator deciding how we should implement what the county commissioners just voted on. So that's a little bit dicey. But I didn't follow those discussions. I wasn't in the charter review. We're not on that, but I don't think it ever made it out. I think that's what you were talking about, having them elected. No, it wasn't on the ballot. I don't think it was. Yeah.
Okay, congratulations on putting a cap on density west of Maliaka. How about the rest of the county? I live on that side of town, around 54, and that Westport development, the traffic, of barracks, but the traffic is full. And I think at some point they're going to have to widen roads. It seems like none of that is ever handled. The developments just go up and willy-nilly, and the roads have to deal with it.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so Westport was part of Murdoch Village, and I don't want to go into the whole history of that, but there was a board, you know, back in 2004 that decided they were going to buy 1,100 acres and use eminent domain, bundle up the land and sell it to developers. Unfortunately, that was way before my time on the board, but it's something that we have to deal with, right? So I'm not passing the buck. It's just that's just the real history of what happened. So this project came forth, and obviously we want to get that property back on the tax rolls. We had a debt to pay off, and also one of the things as a county commission we have to do is make sure we have a vibrant economy and that we have a good, healthy tax base, so we don't have to put the pressure on necessarily the residential tax base. We can spread it out through commercial and other things. And there is commercial components to those projects. But 776 is a state road. It's not a county road. So they have oversight over to the access and things that happen on that road. My understanding is, well, not my understanding, I know this for a fact, they did a corridor study there, and there are plans to fix the road. They're going to make a bunch of improvements. I think they're going to 6-lane in certain spots and put some improvements there and possibles. We're going to get a signal at Flamingo. Well, we have a signal at Flamingo, but what they're going to do is they're going to have a cut-through road that's going to get to Flamingo so you can get a safe way out of that project. But again, this is part of the growth of Charlotte County. They were concurrent. They did check all the boxes. And I'll tell you something. So when I moved here in 1980, as I discussed earlier, I can sit here today and say those were the good old days. People who moved here in the 90s can say those were the good old days. If you moved here 5 years ago, you're probably saying those were the good old days. I can tell you right now, 10 years from now, people will look back at 2024 and say these were the good old days. This is growth. It's painful, but they do have to meet concurrency. And this might sound kind of crazy because I get this all the time. It's like, well, if you know you're going to have issues in the future, why aren't you doing the roads now? Well, it becomes very difficult to spend taxpayer money on something that you may need or you think you're going to need in 10 years now when you have limited funds. You've got to kind of spread it around and meet some of those immediate needs. I talked about the 20-year CIP. We know what we need, but we can only afford to do things in 5-year windows. And they have something called warrants, okay? So if you want a signal put in, you come to me and say, Joe, we need a signal. There's accidents there. I can't just put a signal in. I have to justify to the taxpayers of Charlotte County that it's warranted. I can't just indiscriminately or subjectively start doing these improvements. You have to have an engineer's report, a traffic study done. You have to look at all the geometry of the intersection and things like that and determine if it's warranted. They take accidents into the account and things like that and all the data that they collect, and they bring it back and say, this is warranted because you have these issues. When I moved in my neighborhood, I told you I was in there 25 years ago. There's very few cars driving down my streets back then, right? Very few. Now there's more streets. Or more cars driving down those same streets, and people come to me and say, oh, it's so busy, look at all the, the roads are failing, the level of service isn't there. The level of service hasn't failed. We're just not used to all the cars using the roads now. You know, you go to other places, you go to Sarasota or Fort Myers, we look great up here compared to that. Go to Northport. Go down Price Boulevard, Sumter. It is a mess. It's funny because I told you I talked to these other commissioners, and it's like, oh, I'm getting so many emails on growth. They're like, you got to hear my stories. There's almost every county in Florida is going, we could be having this conversation, pick a county, throw a dart. They're going to talk about infrastructure, growth, we don't have enough money, we need signals, we need big, it's a common theme throughout the state because of the growth. I don't know if DeSantis has just done such a great job, but people are coming, and it's, like I said, it's that balance. But we can do something with the rezones. Again, that's when they're asking for more. And we can condition those things like reducing, if you want this approval, you got to reduce density. You have to do something that'll improve the county. Thank you.
Can you imagine you answering our questions in 3 minutes? Looks like for us. All right, I have 2 questions. I want to know, a lot of people don't think it's right to have commissioners in the RLC, okay? And one reason is I have not forgotten about hearing you on the radio on Lovejoy's show, and you've been on the RLC as a commissioner, and I thought that was kind of awful that you did that as a professional commissioner, and I want to know why you did that.
Sure. So I'll address the 3 minutes first. So our 3 minutes is very consistent with what's gone on through all counties. If you had unlimited time, other people wouldn't get to speak. Imagine if 100 people show up and it's 3 minutes apiece. It becomes very difficult. Those of us that went through some of those public hearings where you had 5 minutes, I remember in I think it was 15 or 16 when I was a candidate, there was at the event center, there was a public hearing. I think it went till 1 in the morning because, everybody had 5 minutes to speak. But, even if your 3 minutes is up, you email me, call me. Just because you have 3 minutes in the chamber doesn't mean you can't get more time with a commissioner. And in terms of the Ken Lovejoy show, remember I said earlier I take on my own party? Remember when I said that? So I was very upset with the REC. They went through an endorsement process for a city race. Members of the endorsement committee were actively campaigning and funding one candidate over the other. That is so unprincipled and so unethical. When I brought it to the attention of the REC, they didn't care. They voted it down. I said, look, we need to rescind this. You cannot have people actively funding and campaigning one candidate over the other when you're the ones making the recommendation for the endorsement. That is so unethical. Okay, Bill Abamateo and his wife. But Bill hosted a campaign event for Debbie Lux at his house, $900. It's in the disclosures. It's a matter of public record. And I named those disclosures. Tracy Agamite and others. Look, it doesn't matter if he did it as a citizen. He was on the that's all right. No. When you're on an endorsement committee, at some point you either recuse yourself and say, I can't do this, I'm conflicted. You can still support your candidate, you just can't serve on an endorsement committee. That's unethical. I will call out members of my party, members of the other party. I'll call out anybody who's not doing the correct thing. Remember when I told you you can twist the rules, you can bend the rules, but when you break them and you cross a line, you will hear from Joe Tiseo. I will not shy away from a fight.
Didn't you break the rules by going on the radio across the whole county and bringing that information out into the public? That should have been inside the REC meeting.
So that's the problem. You can.
Also said we were out of control, and you wouldn't believe it. That kind of comment was very unprofessional from a commissioner.
So here's the thing. Anybody that knows me knows I cross the T's and dot the I's. I actually emailed the Republican Party of Florida and told them, is it okay if I talk about this? He said, yes, it is. So I got permission from the party. So I'm just saying, I didn't just do it to do it. I got permission. He confirmed you have free speech. I'm a big believer in First Amendment rights, so I have free speech as well. So here's the thing. When people are unaccountable, you hold your elected officials accountable through transparency and accountability. You look at the meetings and how they're being carried out there. I was at a meeting, I think it was 2 months ago. I dubbed it the Jerry Springer moment. It was very upsetting as a Republican to see my party in such dysfunction. In all honesty, I was not on the REC until last year. I was asked to join. I was never on there as a commissioner, but I joined. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I speak up when I feel it necessary. Most of the time I just sit back and listen. But yeah, that's why I spoke about it. I was exercising my First Amendment rights. The RPOF approved it.
I'm worried about the rest of the room.
I can stay here. I'll stay here as long as you want. It's not a problem.
And I'd like to also know, my next question, I think I might go on about that, but I'd like to know why we were planning a event at Sunseekers with General Flynn. And the very next day we got word that you wrote a grievance against that. The very next day. And I'd like to know why you do that.
Yeah, I never wrote a grievance for a fundraising event at Sunseeker. So I don't know who told you that. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about, but I don't know. It didn't happen.
I don't need that. I'm pretty loud.
Okay.
All right? I voted for you when I first met you and Tim. But right now, I have very certainly a lot of people that really don't like you anymore and won't be voting for you. They are voters like I am, ordinary citizens. And to what did you attribute that?
Well, look, I can't control who votes for me. I do my job. In other words, when I vote on things or talk about things from the dais, my calculus isn't what it means in the next election. I speak my mind and do what I think is correct for the community as I navigate, the issues that come before the board. So, who you speak to, I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements today, or not today, but recently. I go to neighborhood watch meetings, POAs, HOAs. There's a lot of people that would say otherwise. I really appreciate my public service. Yeah.
But I don't see it. I don't see it among the people that I know anywhere.
No.
And this is very
Well, I'll give you an example. So when I ran the first time, I ran against an NPA, and so it was a general election, so everybody got to vote. So I got 70% of the vote. He got 30%. He still got tens of thousands of votes. No one's ever going to have the market cornered on every vote, but I never look through the prism of what it means for my next election. Everything I do on the dais, I do because I think it's the best decision for the community. And some people like it and some people don't. So it appears that, look, I'm in a place right now, I probably don't have any votes, but I'm here, right? I told you, I serve everybody in the community, even the people that don't like me. I have no illusion that I'm going to come out here and I'm going to get voters here to support me. I'm here because I'm a candidate, but also because I'm a public servant. If you request to speak to me, I'll take all the questions. You pay my salary, I work for you. That's the bottom line. I'd love to have everybody like every single vote I make, but I know that's not possible. If Mr. Kesselring was in that seat, I can tell you right now, do you think everybody's going to like every vote that he takes? Absolutely not. That's just the way it is in this business. But yeah, I didn't do this because Yeah, I didn't do it because I wanted to be a commissioner. I actually stumbled into the job through volunteering, and then kind of the door opened and I kind of walked through it. So, you know, I didn't do this for a career at the time. I had a job. I had 4 kids in school. I did this because I wanted to give back to the community that's given me so much. It provided for my family, provided a place to work. I have my home here, and I thought I could give back, and that, you know, the experience that I've gained in 35, 40 years in business, I can use that on the dais to advance the community. And I think I've done that. I think actually out of all the, and no disrespect to my colleagues, but I think as a member of the board, I've actually made the board better, and I've talked about a lot of things that were very uncomfortable for a lot of people for a long time, like impact fees. That was very uncomfortable. I lost a lot of friends. I got people in the industry that I grew up in won't talk to me anymore because of that impact fee vote. But it wasn't because, if I would have looked at the pressure from the people I knew and friends that I had in the industry for decades and succumbed to that, then it would have clouded my mind. When I got elected, I crossed the finish line owing people nothing except the best that I got. That's it. When you may not like the way I vote, but you can sleep at night knowing I'm not influenced by power, I'm not influenced by money, and any authority. If I think I need to speak it, I will speak it. That's just the way I operate. Anybody who's watched our meetings from the time I got elected to now knows that to be true. That's the only way it can be for me.
Sir, I'm gonna bring it back here.
Yeah, go ahead.
The time I called him, I had a new person in the Colorado area who was unable to be taken care of in her house. And I thought she was destitute. She couldn't afford it. She had a handicapped child, and she was being evicted. She didn't have water, running water, and other things, amenities in the place she was renting. And I called Commissioner Tiseo and asked him what he could do to help get that woman and her handicapped child and other children into another rental facility. He has done it. Less than it wasn't just terrorists.
I mean, you can talk all day.
Yeah, you went.
Say, he's available to move. You mentioned that event center, that was overseas.
Yeah.
And it went till after midnight.
Yeah.
30 minutes. Now, 5 commissioners, 4 disappeared. This man stood there and talked with the remaining people. And one of them was like myself. And I really respected that. The others disappeared. They didn't want to be confronted, questioned, or whatever. We disagreed. We split. This vote was knocking at everybody's affiliation. But I really appreciate the fact that you were available to me. Thank you.
Oh, sorry for
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, guys, I just talked to Mr. Nix. We need to, the votes I'm going to push this, the dean and you're okay with this. Even if you want to come back, we'll have you back again to talk more if you want to. I'm trying to rotate through the room, guys. Please bear with me. I'm sorry. This is a struggle. Thank you.
So I appreciate those comments. So there's a lot of things you'll never see that a commissioner does, right? I appreciate the story, but there's a lot of things you'll never know that I do when people call me that just will not be heard, right? Just doesn't make the newspaper. Since I've been a commissioner, I've been on the Community Action Agency and Affordable Housing Committee for 7 years now. We deal with the very low and moderate income people. We have a state-of-the-art family services center that's very robust if people want it. If they don't want it, it becomes very difficult. But for people who want to get in there and get help and seek help, we'll find something. It may not be exactly what you want when you want it, but we will help. And I know that because I'm on those committees. This is what we deal with every day. But I appreciate those comments, and it kind of backs up what I said earlier. you know, I'm available and I'll talk even when we disagree. Have a question over? Thank you.
Does anyone back here need to go for? Okay, Andy.
I can't believe you said that, seriously. You're the most transparent. This man passed the worst ordinance, in my opinion, in the country, banning filming public officials in a government building, which the disease is spreading nationwide now, violating our free speech, violating our right to free press. The fifth district just had an appeal ruling right here in Florida that said you have no expectation of privacy and you are knowingly violating sunshine law. You put this into the darkness and you have like cracked the whole internet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to answer that question, the Supreme Court ruled that government buildings can have facility rules, time, place, and manner of filming. When you said you can't film elected officials, that's not true. You can take your cameras into our chamber and film us all day long at meetings. You're not prohibited from that.
Film anybody. That's all right to film anybody in the public
Okay.
building.
Well, you said public officials. You said we.
Public building.
Okay. You can film us anytime at any public.
Building,
Yeah.
anybody in the building.
Yeah. So we're allowed by the Supreme Court for time, place, and manner. Well, look.
You just got stuck down by the Fifth Circuit Court.
Well, I'll tell you what. If the courts come down with a ruling, we'll comply.
Oh, I would sue you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll definitely comply.
Knowingly violating my right to free speech,
Right.
and free speech. Trespassing so many times from every building inside our county, it's ridiculous.
Well, if we get
That's not
a
America, that's Nazi Germany.
if we get a court order to do that, then we'll do it.
I'll make you pay, buddy.
Thank you. I'm gonna back up.
Just very quickly, we children still in middle school, and they're in homeschool, universal school. Because the public school system, what county we're pretty much talking about, since, all right? At what point are we going to be exempt from having to pay school taxes when our kids are not in any public funded schools?
So you have an elected school board, and they have their own millage rate, and the statutes determine the school budget and how they can appropriate those funds, not the county commission. We don't vote or have a say in those funds. Now, my understanding is, I believe there's a program where you can get a voucher, and if you want to pull your kids, you can use that voucher and go to any private school you want. Maybe Danny can speak more later on that. How much is it? Yeah, and the state determines, you know, the.
And they also approve that through the step-ups for students. Except for the fact that the legislature, which is one for you, has written in such a discriminatory way that those that are in schools that are faith-based schools, mine are Freedom Project Academy, which is run by John Birch's son, very Christian, conservative, religion-oriented schools. They do not have any religion classes. At the same time, they're discriminated against. The money's supposed to follow the student. If they have residents in the state of Florida, the money's supposed to follow students. The census office has ignored it so far. Michael Grant's office says, oh, I'm turned out, so I'm not going to do anything about it, which I think is a bunch of bullshit, pardon my French. That really ticked me off, because my students will not experience that right that everybody else has, that the money is supposed to follow them because they keep a faith-based school, even though it's really not.
Yeah.
So at what point will they get part of that pie?
Yeah. So.
That is a mistake that they made. It doesn't matter where the school is located. It shouldn't matter where the kids go to school, and if they follow the curriculum and they go to school every day, the money should follow them in the school.
Yeah, I think you made a point. That's a great Danny Nix question. Yeah. Yeah, that.
But and to say that makes me want to not pay property or school taxes. Why should I pay for a public school?
Can we transfer your question and start on the next session with yours? Is it okay if you start with that? Okay. Perfect. So we're done now. Okay. All right. Thank you. Who's next?
Two questions.
Yeah.
Before you were commissioner, you approached the board, you had an issue you were very passionate about. Your 3 minutes had expired. You looked at the others in the audience and begged for them to yield time to you. The Board of Commissioners yielded and allowed you to have additional time. We have often asked your board to yield time, yet you refuse. Why did you ask for it, yet you won't give it? Second question. You often see me at code enforcement hearings helping folks that either I rent property from or work directly with. You made a comment to me that that's why we have code enforcement hearings to sort that out. I don't know if you've been watching those videos, but in the fall of 23, your very own code enforcement magistrate said, Mr. Palin, I believe you are right, and Charlotte County codes are violating state law. What are you going to do as Commissioner Tiseo, re-elected, to eliminate some of those ordinances you guys have imposed, maybe not you directly, but previous boards and some on your board, to alleviate the criminality that we face with code enforcement to have to defend ourselves against your ordinances that violate state law?
So I'll address the yielding of time first. I remember that meeting, and I think it was Kathy Capola was there. There was two of us there from the public, and it was about an assessment. And I ran out of my time, and I just pulled a, I guess, a maneuver to try and get the minutes. I was able to convince the chairman to do it. He didn't have to do it. He could have denied me, but I kind of just, if you watch the video, we kind of stumbled through it and didn't know what to do. So I think I just got a freebie. So I mean, I just asked for it and got it. He didn't have to give it. I've got some of my
But if you asked for it and you got it.
Yeah, well, it's up to
the necessity occasionally for it.
It's up to the chairman to grant the time. You know, if somebody asks for it, he can grant the time. I've actually had people come back up during certain hearings where I wanted to hear more testimony from the public, and I asked the board, I had to get permission from my colleagues, hey, can I bring that citizen back up? It was during land use. I think I've done it twice, and I had him come back up to give him more time to speak. I would have like a question saying, hey, can you explain that to me again, just to give him more time to speak. But I asked for it and I got it. He didn't have to give it. He wasn't required to by parliamentary procedure. And actually, I heard later, he had some issues later. He was told you shouldn't have done that. But I got away with it, and that's just the way it is. But it's 3 minutes. I understood that going in. And, you know, I emailed my commissioners and called them as well on that. On the ordinances, I think what you're talking about is the Right to Farm Act. There's some new legislation that passed and regarding bonification of agricultural land where you can get those exemptions. And you know what the great thing about this country is? You are provided due process. And that's what code compliance is. It's not to fine you. It's not to put you in jail. It's to go over the code and get it into compliance. And by the way, we don't have the market cornered on perfection. If we've made a mistake and you did a good job of presenting your case, that's the venue for it. That's the great thing about our Constitution. You have the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. So while the commissioners don't inject themselves, it's unethical. We cannot get involved in a code compliance case. That's your time to, with unlimited time, to make your case on your behalf to a special magistrate in a quasi-judicial hearing that presides as a judge. And I know he gave you a couple of continuances on that, and then you came back, and I think that's great. Not every case ends up in a fine. So if the county attorney comes back and said, hey, we made an error on this, we need to change our ordinance, I'll be more than happy to look at that.
Actually,
I haven't heard that, but
I'll set the record straight on that. I didn't ask for the continuance on those.
Yeah, he gave it.
He asked for the continuance on the county's behalf so they could research the
Right.
law that they were breaking. Additionally, though, there are individuals where you said that's the benefit of the quasi-judicial hearing. Not every citizen in this county or taxpayer is well versed in land law. And there's a case currently in the judicial side of it, which is costing the family substantial money because this county has taken a chicken and egg approach to farming. And I know I'm picking on it because I'm a farmer.
Is that a pun on words?
Yeah. So you require them to have the farm to get the bonification, but you code enforce them as they're building the farm so that they can't get to the bonification because of your ordinances. Would you be willing, in the next few months to a year, to sit down with a number of real farmers like myself to rewrite your ordinances to allow a period of time for those agriculturally zoned properties to build out their farm to meet the bonification process to meet your ordinances?
Well, first of all, take that as a vote of confidence that I'll be around a year from now. That means I won my re-election. Here, we don't have to wait a year. I'm your commissioner today. if you have an issue, email me the concerns. I'll look into it with staff to understand what you're talking about, and then I'll be in touch with you. Send me an email now. I don't have to wait.
In the past, I do have those emails, and we went nowhere on it. So I would like your commitment to revoking some of those ordinances that are violating state law.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm not going to revoke anything unless I understand it, right? Who would tell you they'd revoke something until they get the issue and do their fact finding? I have not done that yet. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I read a lot, you know, but I'm not a lawyer, so I will rely on legal staff to look at things, and I'll read the statute myself and see, hey, does that make sense? But yeah, if there's, you know, I know some bonification and some ag laws just got passed this year. As an example, we used to be able to charge per acre on the fire fee. You're now exempted from the acreage charge, but you have to pay for your house, for your unit. So that's a big savings for people with large amounts of acreage. I think it was $25 an acre or something like that. So that just got passed, and we have to implement that as well.
We're down to 3. Caitlin, Mr. I'm in here. We just got to go back and go back to not just the right chance, but it is with unimproved roads in the county, and I believe the county is pulled back on the in that process, I think we probably work out of districts with residents or experience in county, as far as maintenance, green books, the roads. County made a decision on the recommendation of the works, right or wrong, to for all the next years, for each as well as the road surface. They were implemented in 1967 in current law by Yes County, and there's now as a result of drainage system. I was in fact until 2000 when the county moved to use the road. When the county moved away from that, you know, I borrowed something, and just a condo, whatever, until we put it back in people with better condition than when I left. The county left and did not reinstate the drainage system, which is still a fact. Unintended consequences have been to every agency, state, federal government, and county, up through the government. Nobody wants to touch on it. We have a neighbor, the one I came into the county is talking about, the contractor. That same neighbor has lost that whole ring. 2-year fight, nobody touches it. Unintended consequences, 3 blocks of water, all rocks, flooding our property through rings. Unintended consequences by enacting the removal of this property back where it was. What, as a commissioner, when you look at unintended consequences, we rectify those things because it's third-degree felony.
So we're talking about the ranchettes. Okay.
But not limited.
Right.
Anybody else that we have done for county.
Yeah. So where you live in the ranchettes, it was back in the 60s. I guess it was an old grove and that failed, and the owner decided to put in dirt roads throughout there, and it was a private road community. He created and recorded an easement, a public easement, to use the roads, but they weren't deeded to the county to own the roads and own the right-of-way. Those are privately owned roads with an easement for public to go across. There's a big difference there between publicly owned right-of-way and an easement. So the county never accepted the roads. And what happened was, I believe it was a history about 92, a bunch of people in the ranchettes who were having trouble maintaining their private roads came to a board and convinced them to create an MSBU for the street and drainage, because I guess it was kind of like herding cats out there. They couldn't get everybody on the same page to pay, so the only way to do it was to petition the local government. So that was never created with government intervention out there. The citizens actually asked the government to create this MSBU. So again, that was done before my time, but my research and understanding out there is for the assessment that was being charged, I think it was $100 per unit or something like that, or per acre. I can't remember what the number was. It generated so little money that the maintaining of those roads, and it was, you know, I don't know, 100 miles of roads, I can't remember the number, 38 miles of roads, dirt roads, that the money didn't even touch it. So you'd only do bits and pieces. It was kind of a piecemeal approach because you couldn't touch everybody every year with maintenance. And then you get a few rainstorms, and whatever work was done, it was washed out again. There was discussion about, to do it correctly, it would be thousands of dollars per acre. Nobody wanted that, and believe it or not, I had people who I know, I told you I was here for 40 some odd years, people I know who live out there said, you need to go. Like, you're not doing anything. They were happy to see us go. They said, why would I even spend $100 when I'm not seeing the improvement? So, number one, it's a private road community. When you buy out there, you know it's a private road community. It's not a county-owned road. So we're limited in what we can do. Personally, we should have never been in there in the first place because we don't do private road maintenance. But they did it to help out the constituents who can. That's the way the board voted. So we reversed that and put it back the way it was. Because we couldn't do it. Now, I hear there's a drainage district or something. I think Dave had mentioned it. And I said, look, if there's a consent decree or something, we'll abide by it. And I think you said it was in the works. It was like months ago. So if there's something we're supposed to be doing, we'll do it. I just haven't seen it. So if there's a consent decree or some other regulatory agency like SwiftMud or SouthMud, whoever's got jurisdiction, tells us we're supposed to be doing something with drainage, I'll be more than happy to do it. Yeah, I mean, you know, you need the right regulatory agency to tell us that. I mean, we didn't issue the drainage permits. They're not county permits.
But it was a drainage district that took care of the drainage. Where the issue of the road came in, yes, they are easement, they are not right of ways. But the problem was the county was not following the green book, which was signed off by the county, we would say, which would have rectified the drainage problem, but start using the other surfaces because they were flat and they were in water rather than the ground.
I'll tell you, we'll do anything you want out there. If we were to reinstate it, you just have to pay. And when we did the calculation on what it would take to properly turn the roads over and redo the drainage, it was millions and millions of dollars. Nobody wanted to pay it. So we were stuck either continue doing what we're doing, which is nothing, and charging you $100 an acre or whatever it was. We weren't effective out there. It wasn't helping anybody. But, you know, I don't want to get into the debate all night. We can talk about it offline, but we can be here for an hour. We don't do, it's not our drainage. We maintained it when we had the MSBU in place, but prior to '92, we didn't maintain it.
No, you didn't, but it was under a drainage district, which then turned away from the county.
We put it back to the 1992, prior to the MSBU, whatever was in effect when that place was created in the 60s. Well, look, all I can say is if there's a drainage district that sends us a letter saying we're supposed to be doing something, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Do you think we can nail down in writing the precise and then
Offline, maybe get a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had some email. We had a discussion on, but yeah.
Here's two more, Mr. Tiseo.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go quick. Thank you for coming tonight. You brought up the Wawa project in Englewood.
Yeah.
Get that thing done as fast as possible. I've read the opposition to that. The opposition acts like it's Disney World, and we're gonna have 10,000 cars coming in and out of the Wawa like it's a destination. When the reality is, there's no place to turn right to get gasoline coming into Englewood or Port Charlotte. It'll take a load off left turns to the racetrack and the Walmart. It's actually a fantastic project for that and for the building. So I'm glad that you can't do anything about it because it's the kind of noise out there that politicians tend to listen to and slow things down when they don't need to be slowed down. But anyway, different question, bigger picture than all of the weeds. Everybody in this room is a Republican. Most everybody in this room is conservative. Everybody in this room, I would say, is fiscally conservative. You're a Republican. We all believe government's too big. Give me one example, one thing that you would shrink in Charlotte County besides government.
Did you say besides government?
No. The size of government.
Oh, the size of government. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. A lot of people think we just show up at board meetings and hear stuff for the first time and vote on stuff. But we're working every day through staff meetings, emails. I'm working with professional staffs to prepare for agendas and prepare for planning. We're cutting every time we have a board meeting. We're voting on this stuff. You'll see an agenda item with the budget impact, and you're going to see a description of the project. We're debating this stuff every day. So it's really hard at the end of the year to say, oh, we're just going to, cut to cut. It's part of our decision.
Just say one thing that you see out there that you're looking at, and what do we do? Let's get rid of it. You don't have, I don't need the mechanics of it.
Yeah. What would I get rid of?
Yeah. You just look at it and go, man, we spent way too much money on that. We can do better. We can get rid of that.
Okay, we didn't spend a penny of your money on cornhole. I told you that. It came through the tourist development tax, which is supposed to be used for. No, I don't know. What could I cut? Okay, I guess I could cut, and I think my opponent brought this up. Our executive assistants. When I came on board, we had 4. I was the only one without one, so I was sharing others. Could we get by with less? Absolutely, we can do it. But here's an interesting thing I learned. It took me 6 months, and I ultimately had to hire my own person. One of the interesting things is your executive assistant is in your meetings, doing your emails, listening to your questions, knowing how you're going to vote. They see what you're formulating. Imagine that person going to all the other commissioners, serving as their assistant. That's a pretty powerful person who knows exactly where every commissioner, what they're thinking, how they're going to vote, what they're going to do. And another thing our assistants do is when we can't make meetings, they go out in the community on our behalf. So I would have to be juggling other commissioners, it goes to public engagement. I'm very a public engagement guy, but yeah, could it be cut? Absolutely, it could be cut.
You're the first commissioner that I've ever asked that question to and actually freaking names them.
Yeah, we can.
2 years ago, Deutsch sat up there and went, I don't think we can ever get rid of anything. We need more. Yeah. Congratulations. At least you gave an answer.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thanks.
Last one.
Uh-oh, wait, my opponent's got a question. By the way, if Dave wants to have a debate, I'll be more than happy to come back on a one-on-one. Yeah, if he wants to debate me.
The 90,000, I did some record requests, and I found correctly wrong. It was supposed to be a 3-year contract, $100,000 a year for 90,000. It wasn't just used.
Yeah, actually, here it is. Yeah, here it is. Here's the agreement with the American Cornhole Organization. So it spells out, this is what we gave, $15,000 through the Visitors Convention Bureau and $5,000 from the state. That was our contribution. It wasn't from your tax bill. That money came from the heads on beds tax, which is supposed to be used for these events. Yeah, but you said it came from, we wasted their tax money from their. Well, no, it's heads on beds. It's supposed to be used for, it's called a tourist development tax. It's supposed to be used by statute for this. We can't use it to plug holes in our budget. It can only be used to develop tourism. Huh?
We need to use it for needs, somehow. That kind of stuff needs to be changed.
Well, actually, I wouldn't change it, and I'll tell you why. Our tourism is an industry. There's a reason we don't have state income tax here, because tourism is a huge industry. It helps keep your taxes low. We want these organizations to come here. That organization produced, I don't know if I have it on the second page, but it produced 1,100 room nights and about 1.2 million in economic impact. That means all our restaurants, hotels, and when you travel, you spend money. I travel with my family. That's why you have that. For a $15,000 investment from our tourism tax, generated $1.2 million in return for our local businesses, our service workers, and everybody else. It keeps the economic engine going. I would not get rid of that. It's there for a reason. It's part of our Florida economy. If we get rid of that and start using it for our budget, there goes the economic impact of the tourism industry. None of that money you'll see tourism. It's all going to go to fill holes in budget and cause bloated budgets. So I disagree with that one. And that would be a Danny Nix question, because this is by legislature enactment. It's not local ordinance. We're required by statute. Yeah, do you have another question? Or oh, yeah.
We're going to have to wrap it no matter what.
No, I wouldn't lobby to change it because it helps the community and it keeps people working.
Is it a quick question?
I'm wrapping right now.
A few years ago, the commissioners
talk about expanding the MSBU's and going to taxing. We kind of fought that one.
Can you hear?
Do you still think that the commissioners would again consider eliminating the MSBU?
Can I,
I can repeat it.
Oh, good, thank you.
And then the question goes with that, is I think there's 3 major communities being built along Marksville Road. Will they create their own MSBUs, separate MSBUs, or will they do roads and driveways?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you asked about eliminating MSBUs and the new developments along Burnstall Road. Will they be having an MSBU? So the developments along Burnstall Road, some of them are special districts, CDDs, and they will be paying for their own internal roads and private roads because they created their own internal taxing district. So the residents who live within those communities will pay for their roads internally. So that's how that works on those. In terms of MSBUs, yeah, I'd love to see MSBUs at some point go away. But, you know, one of the reasons they were created, I talked about this earlier because I did some research on that because they are an unusual taxing function. I mentioned earlier when Charlotte County was developed, General Development was only interested in selling lots. So you have 200,000 platted lots in Charlotte County. We're about 100,000 developed. So only halfway there to the density in Charlotte County, right? So we got a long way to go. And people own those lots and they're paying taxes. We have hundreds of miles of roads now that we have to maintain where there's no house on those roads. I don't know if anybody's gone down some of these streets where there's nothing but roads and vacant lots. The MSBU was created so those vacant lots would pay their proportionate share of the road maintenance. Because some of those lots are only worth $3,000 on the assessment roll, so they pay $20, $30 a year in taxes. That's not going to be enough to repave those roads. So what it does is the MSBU breaks it down into unit pricing. So they're going to pay maybe $150 to go towards the road because the road is access to those lots, so they should pay their share. If we didn't have the MSBU, every single one of us in Charlotte County would come out of our taxes. It has to be made up somewhere. Those roads at some point have to get repaved because if they don't, the structural integrity breaks down, then you have to redo the whole road. So at some point, they all have to be maintained, the ditches, even if it's just a safety cut once a year. But absent of an MSBU, all of us are paying. So it was a way to distribute the cost equally to those vacant lot owners. When we reach a certain density, theoretically, when we start getting towards build out, that's when you can get out of the MSBU business. We're just not there yet. Yeah, and the other thing about MSBUs, a lot of people like them. They have citizens on them. They make recommendations to the board, if you're on it, on what your work program looks like. And they make recommendations to the board, say this is the work program we want, and it comes to the board and we approve it or don't approve it, or change the budget. If the budget's too high, you know, people come in and say, oh, it's too much, and we'll work with people on that. We do that every year.
Everyone, thank you so much for putting up with me in this. I know it's really great. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you. I'm going to leave that. I really hope to have a more back and forth discussion. I want to have a genuine.
I was going to read your emails too, but I didn't.
Let me throw all this down.
I'm saving that for a later date.
How you doing? Good.
His video too, so
Yeah. That would be a lot of time.
I understand this is a hard thing for me to balance because before June in the primary season, you have so many months and so many candidates. I'm trying my best, but I appreciate it. I want to know more than 2, but there's no way to do it. So I'm trying to find ways to get as many people exposed to as many things as possible. And I thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who has, and thank you. Candidates, welcome. Thank you. I'm going to do an introduction and I'm going to do the same questions for that.
All right. I go to bed at 8:30, so we're going to jump on this pretty quick, do what we got to do. First and foremost, thank you for having me here. I know that it's one of those opportunities that I want to make sure that I meet everyone, not just a few people. I understand that when I am running for Florida State House District 75, I don't work for me anymore. I don't reserve that right to work for me anymore. I work for you. Now remember, I work for every constituent. So we need to understand that, right? We're not going to always agree, but at the end of the day, I'm always hard at work for you. And that's what it should be about. A little bit about me. Born and raised in Athens, Georgia. I am a University of Georgia Bulldog. I hope that's okay with everybody here. When we are not playing, though, I do root for the Gators, and my daughter is at FSU, so I can really do well with just about anybody in the room except for Miami fans. See, I think we can get along there. The most important thing you need to know about me is I'm a child of God. I'm unapologetic about it. I am saved by the blood of the Lamb, and that is the reason I am where I am today. After that, I am married to one of the most amazing women in the world, Carla Nix. And then I have my two daughters, Katie and Riley. That's my true north. Everything else is just window dressing. So I don't need titles. It doesn't matter if I'm your state rep or I'm your #1 commercial realtor. I'm going to do what's right at the end of the day because that's what you're putting me there. Can we all agree on that? I would hope that we can, right? Family's got to come first. I'm going to make this as short as I possibly can, but I will give you a little bit about me. Born and raised in Athens, Georgia. My uncle owned a farm. We handled brooder houses, which is raising chickens. I wasn't doing that. I was cutting hay, or I was cleaning layer houses for chickens, or my family owned a mobile home moving company. So I was out setting up manufactured housing, doing everything I could. I don't know anything but work, which typically works out pretty well for you when you get down here. I'm not an avid reader, but I understand that we have to stay inclined with what's going on day to day. So you won't find me reading fictional novels. If you want to talk about that, I'm probably not going to be the best person to have a conversation with. But if you want to talk about legislation, I get excited about it. About as excited as I get about that honey I just got back there. Can't wait to put that on a biscuit in the morning. Let me just go ahead and tell you. Came to Florida not really wanting to be here. I'm a Georgia boy through and through, but my daughter moved here, and at 4 years old, Daddy was not going to be away from her. That's what brought me here, and I can tell you I will, to the best of my ability, never go back. I am a Floridian through and through. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but I am. I love where I live. I love what we do. I love the fact that we are a red state. I love the fact that we get it. I love the fact that we are working hard, and we're going to continue to work hard on our election integrity. We're leading the nation in that, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm excited to see that happening. I'm not an illegal immigrant fan. I think if you're going to come here, you need to come here the right way. I love the fact that our governor has said the same thing. So with that, I'm going to open this up, right? I could stay here and talk about what's going on. I'm a commercial realtor in town, but it's more important that I hear what you have. I don't come here prepared with anything. I come here more wanting to hear from you. So I don't think I'm allowed to do that. I heard very clearly, where's the gentleman that was going to walk around with the microphone?
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, I just started. All right, well, let's go. I'm guessing we're going to talk about schools.
So, the extension of my unwillingness to support schools that is really don't have to for, it goes back to that question about legislative method happening. When the local legislation and money is involved with children, that's all great. We can actually exercise all the way through. So the problem is for those kids that are in so-called faith-based schools, and the categorize that very blatantly. Those that are in virtual schools, if you are in a brick-and-mortar Christian school, set up for students will pay. And it literally shows in my account that the funds are awarded. But the Department of Education will not release the funds. So their argument is that it's a virtual school. It should not matter. The kids inside here, this is where we live. I want to know what you're going to do to fix that, because they've been brought up in the last legislature, and they did nothing about it, little, nothing. The Christian Family Coalition brought up all of that for fact, because a friend of mine on the local saw that all along with something to do with, and they did nothing. So I want to know what exactly you're going to do to make sure that if you are a resident in the state of Florida, then money follows you 100%.
All right. I will gladly answer that question. First and foremost, what am I going to do? Let's be very clear about something. I'm one of 120 legislative members in the House of Representatives. I'm not going to do anything myself. I have to win votes of my peers. Then it's got to go through to the Senate. Then it's got to go to the governor. So I'll have the conversation. If we have something on the books, we need to make sure that those are followed. But I'll tell you there's another side to this story. I hear your side, right? But I also know a group of individuals that put their homestead here, but they never live in the state of Florida, hardly ever. They're either in Italy or somewhere else, and that's where their kids are doing their virtual school. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying we have to delve into it and work the bill. If you, well, again, does the statute have anything to say about when you're here and when you're not? I don't know that. I would have to study it. I'll come back to you and make you a commitment that if we have a policy that's in place and it's not being followed, my office will work it to the ends of the earth to get it followed. We don't implement things and then not do what we say we'll do. I don't believe the governor wants to do that. I don't believe the legislature wants to do that. I hear you. Yeah, so what we need to do is we need to come through. I've got your number, but we need to come through and we need to look and say, all right, if exactly, if this isn't being followed, we need to help kind of move through that. Can I just add one little thing to that? So this brings me to a strong point though, right? I'm not a fan of just invoking laws to invoke laws. I believe one of the most important jobs a state legislature has is to stop bad bills, to stop trying to grow our government. We need to follow our Constitution. We had a great conversation about that. We've got to follow our Constitution. Now, there are things that need to be reworked. We live in a different day and a different time. I understand that. But we don't need to invoke laws just to invoke laws. That is not my opinion.
I'm going to inject mine here. Can you talk to me about the role of government and anything you think you might want to target, you already studied, that you might want to address to improve, or anything, or maybe the best thing happening in Florida right now that you want to support happening?
You weren't going to ask me the question about what's wrong with government today?
That's the first one. Problem and good. So anything that would be a problem you'd like to address, and then secondly, what is something you think is going well and you want to focus on?
All right, well, this probably isn't the state of Florida, but Joe Biden is our biggest problem right now, and we need to find a way to work through that problem. Immigration is a problem. We need to fight through that problem, and hey, why don't we just uphold the laws we currently have and get them in place? I am not someone that says we do not need individuals to come here. I'm saying you need to come here the right way. And I'll answer the question before it comes out, because I got to meet with the Trump Club, which I really enjoyed doing, and there was a great question that came up, and I got to speak with a gentleman afterwards. If they come here illegally, they need to go home. Come here the right way. I'll be very clear about that. What's the rule of government? The Constitution. Follow it. Stay in your lane. Come through. If there's something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be worked on, let's work it. Let's work the bills. I can tell you, government doesn't get it right every time. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to get it right every time. I can promise you at some point, I'm going to let you down. It's not going to be intentionally, but I can promise you it's going to happen. The most important part is, what do I do about it? How do I work through it? That's when it really matters. So just know I'm here to have those conversations when they come up. I think she had her hand up.
I have a next question. I'll you again.
Leave one.
So now we have all the children that are leaving. I mean, they're here. We were second and third graders in 4 classes, the second and third graders in 4 classes. We probably got 20 kids in each class. Now, there's 7 classes, we're gonna have 7 classes of second and third graders next year. Probably way more kids in the class. How are you sustaining the teaching of these children? I mean, I don't get it, they're all the leaders. How are we supporting that? That's what I don't understand, but they're coming in with too much. The teachers are more from, I mean, some are more else than I. It's so frustrating, I don't even have any teachers to teach all these things anymore. And I know you're not, I mean, I just don't know how.
You're in my lane right now. We're talking the same language.
And school. I mean, they're not the schools, they're all hospitals. The students of this invasion, and, you know, it sounds great, and I know Trump loves it, the same way when he said, that he will eliminate a lot of these people out of the country. But,
So this is going to be more than just that, right? Okay, so I'm going to come into your question, but if it's okay, I want to go a little deeper with it. One, Charlotte County, you'll know the answer to this. Does anybody know how much Charlotte County spent in 2023? I think you'll know the answer to this too. For medical assistance to illegal immigrants in 2023. $1.25 million. Sarasota County, $8.75 million. Manatee County, $12.5 million. 3 counties with a huge total of dollars. And we're dealing with we have people here that can't get the help that they need. Veterans, we can go even way deeper on. Then we've got children who are brought here. I understand the parents want to give them a better life. I do. But we're not making it better for them when we're giving them, gift cards? The moment that they get here, and what Grady Judd said they can go in New York and apply, and if I think it was in a thing with that a sexual trafficking deal, and they were getting plane vouchers to fly anywhere for free.